Good day to you one and all. It is I, Justin Hawkins, and this is Justin Hawkins Rides Again. Today is a rare and precious opportunity to do a long-form Justin Hawkins Rides Again. I haven't done one of these for, well, it feels like a donkey's year. I'm not sure. How long is a donkey's year? A few months. It's been ages, basically. But today I'm going to be talking to the prodigious and prolific and brilliant Devin Townsend, whose song I covered, about a month ago or something. I'm really excited to talk to him. He's going to have loads to say. And I'm just going to sit here and be silent, I think. Justin Hawkins rides again. I did an extra little thing for you. What do you call that? A gliss?
Yeah.
A downward gliss. Which is
downward gliss. That sounds like an emotional state. What's the? Did you paint that guitar yourself?
No, I'm really flattered that you think I would have such ability. But
why would you think I wouldn't?
I don't know. I think if I drew it, there'd be a knob in there somewhere, just hidden away.
Well, fair.
You know,
yeah, fair.
I will always try and conceal some. I will subvert it. But this was done by a guy. I think his name's Ian Ward. This is obviously an actor.
And there are no such concealed knobs in his artwork.
I'm choosing to suspend the disbelief, and I haven't gone looking. Quite honestly, I'm not sure. If
I might go in the opposite way and just make the assumption.
Yeah, you're just going to stare at it for the whole interview and see.
For the whole interview, and actually, second only to the 4 mystery containers of liquid.
Oh, I wasn't sure if these were in shots. Sorry.
Oh, they are. They are.
Yes, these are ginger shots.
Good.
And then these ones are. Well, in this country, we call them curcuma shots, but you'll probably know them as turmeric or turmeric.
Yeah. Nice.
Yes.
It was like a forced perspective because those are like those little tiny containers. Yet from the perspective here, I thought you were going to be drinking 4 liters of orange juice during this.
This is it's an endurance challenge.
It is. It's not a bladder infection.
No, I swear to God. Speaking of which, let's talk about. Anyway, so Devin, thanks a lot for coming on. I know that you've just done PowerNerd, and you're preparing for something super spectacular. It's coming up next month, isn't it? The Moth, right?
It is. Shall we dive straight into that?
I think let's do it, because I think people.
All right.
Because I want to talk about lots of things today. But I think it's good to contextualize it by talking about your. I think the sheer volume of your output, if you'll permit the sexual innuendo. But you've got something coming up, and you've just finished something. So talk.
Yeah, so essentially, I think we can kill all 3 of these birds with one well-placed stone here. The voluminous nature of the output is only just because I love it so much, and I, at a very young age, sort of invested in home studio stuff. So I've been learning how to engineer and produce, etc., for as long as I've been playing, essentially, and that yields the ability to be able to articulate this stuff whenever I feel. And I'm sure you would relate in the same way that if your job is exclusively doing this, it's just a matter of time until you've got a fair amount of output. Mm-hmm. PowerNerd was the last record that I'd done, and that was more of a. It seems like each moment of emotional significance or artistic significance or whatever in my career seems to be identified by a number of albums in each cycle. And this one seems to be 4. First one was PowerNerd, which is basically a easy sort of way to sort of reintroduce the work to the audience. Mm-hmm. And then this next one is something I've been working on for a decade, and it's called The Moth. And essentially, ever since I was, I'm a child of the 70s, so ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to do a musical of some sort. But as I got older, I find that the shelf life of those 70s musicals don't land as well for me in my mid-50s. They seem pretty corny, right?
Well, some of them do. I mean, but you've got things like The Phantom of the Paradise, which has
No, that's
aged
true.
like a fine
Yeah, that's
wine,
true.
you know.
That is a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, I've only seen it in fits and starts,
Yeah.
and
There's a
I
lot
think
to
I've
take
seen
in one
everything I
go.
need to see. Yeah, man, that's an endurance test, right?
Yeah.
But I started looking into the idea of what it means to do operatic things, because again, I had always sort of seen it in my mind's eye as like the traditional idea of what an opera is. But then I found out it's actually, opera is just simply, and I'm probably wrong with this, defined that the narrative is informed by the music rather than the other way around. Mm-hmm. And so the North Netherlands National Orchestra and Choir had proposed the idea of being able to sort of actualize this thing I've been working on for so long. And yeah, I've got a month left to put it together, and then we perform it in the Netherlands March 27th and 28th.
So this is a one-shot deal, and you've written this thing over the course of a decade.
Yeah.
And then you just perform it twice and make a beautiful recording of it, and then that's it.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, brother. I mean, it's like I never really. I've got a constant stream of sort of creative energy, but I'm not a business-minded
to me, it sounds like you have multiple streams, because if you've got a project that you've been working on for 10 years, plus in between that you're doing like if you'll permit me saying it like this, the PowerNerd, then if it's part of a 4-album sequence and you wanted it to be the most accessible in terms of like how outlandish the arrangements are and how math it is, I suppose, then that's a gateway album for that sequence.
Yeah.
And then it allows people a way in, I suppose, to consume the rest of the more challenging material that's coming.
Yeah, that's the idea, I guess.
Okay,
That's the idea.
But the thing is, like, isn't there a temptation at some point, if you're working on the second or third installment of that, to lift things from the 10-year musical project? I mean, certain ideas, or if you're stuck for a riff or something, do you ever feel like you can plunder that one, or are they literally two completely separate trains of thought that you can jump between?
To a degree, I think the thing that identifies the music at any particular period in time is whether or not it resonates with your experience. Because I think what we're trying to do ultimately is provide media in some way that represents your experience in a way that other people perhaps don't have the vocabulary for. I mean, that's the perfect world, and as such, there's a shelf life to a lot of the material. As you change, like my kid just moved out of home, or a friend passes away, or your parents are getting older, any number of life experiences are going to inform what tonalities seem to resonate with us at any particular period of time. Yeah. So I think down the road, there's sometimes a riff I'm like, oh, that is cool, we could repurpose that. But I also feel that after a certain period of time is over, it's like whatever material was presented during that time is just no longer of much significance, right?
Oh, right. So if the riff doesn't make it into a song within like an arbitrarily chosen period of time, it will never be seen again, and will be.
Well, it's not arbitrary, I would say. I think it's but it's subjective, right?
Okay,
because I think sometimes life and the experiences that we have are just so. They're so back to back that it's just your breadth of influence is just constantly being replenished. Mm-hmm. But then there's other years where things are, maybe there's not as much change.
Yeah, maybe there's a fallow period in terms of inspiring experience. And
well, I think we've all been, I would hazard to guess, over the past 5 years dealing with an onslaught of consecutive fucked up experiences, right?
Yeah.
So
one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you that question about whether there's a temptation to plunder from one project to if you're struggling with another, is because like after this fallow period of the pandemic and all this stuff that we've experienced, The Darkness made an album, and I found myself stealing from a musical that I was working on in the 90s. so I didn't have the patience to see the musical through, but there was still some little bits of it that were kind of usable now and resonate emotionally. And there's probably like is it fair to say that there's a conditional memory attached to things? So like if there's a riff and it's just like a riff and it's an exciting riff to listen to, but there's no experience attached to it, maybe later you'll find the emotion in your experience that makes that riff relevant again, so it isn't completely forgotten and nothing's wasted, or is it just gone?
Well, I think that there's it's a symbiotic relationship between your ability to create patterns on an instrument versus how those patterns are going to relate to your experience. And I think that the synapses that connect during those periods are once your life starts to change, you forget. I mean, at least I do. Like I'll go through a riff, and for example, there was a riff that I had written when I was very young that reminded me of the rain. Just it was a suspended chord, and it just, for whatever reason, whatever biases I was raised with musically, that collision of tonalities reminds me of a rainy day. And so I would go out into the backyard and just play this riff whenever it was raining, and it kind of hardwired itself to my connection to what tonalities and weather represent together. Yet in the same breath, when it's coming to things that are emotional, specifically as we get older, the emotional experience just seemed to be so transient, and not only transient, but as a father, as a friend, as an adult, you have to kind of move on really quickly from these things, or step up to the table if something's needed, like if there's a passing of a loved one or what have you. And as a result of that, sometimes I find it easy to forget the ways certain notes interact with those experiences. And I think no matter how hard I try after the fact, it's like if you don't capture it in the moment, it just becomes elusive.
So I've been reading about you, and I've seen some of your remarks that you've made about social media and the obligation, or the perceived obligation, of an artist to provide a constant stream of meaningless content.
Yeah.
And it strikes me that you might be one of those people, not dissimilar to myself, where I get a lot of shit done, right? But that's because there are objectives and there are targets, and there's deadlines involved, and I know what a body of work looks like, and I know how to finish it, and I know what to chase and what I need to do to achieve that. But it feels like sometimes in my personal life, the way I work is, it's at the expense of my personal hygiene, or I might not do as much hoovering, but I've got like all my OCD is firmly, laser focused on the work that I have to do. I imagine that you're probably quite similar to that. Would that be fair?
No. You don't have children though, right?
I do, actually.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I have one
How
child.
old?
11. I just put her to bed a second ago.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's obviously different, but I find that the chaos that exists in my mental processes, and not chaos in terms of it being unbalanced necessarily, but it's just it's erratic. Like I tend to follow my interests, and I'm not ADHD or any of these things, but if I'm free to function in the way that I find to be the most efficient, it appears as such because I kind of go between things, right?
Yeah.
And as a result of my brain just constantly being in that zone, I have to have my environment organized. So everything, there's a drawer for my passport, there's everything, there's a place for everything. And I start and end the day by putting things back. You know what I mean? It's like doing the dishes or the laundry or making my bed or any of these things. And as much as this sounds like it's like a choir boy, I think it's less that and more of a learned behavior, because in the past I used to just forego those things. But the discipline required to maintain even the most rudimentary aspects of a disciplined existence, also it's the same mechanism when I'm looking for a file, or when the computer is constantly crashing. We have to figure out which plugin is the one that's causing the problems. Those same mechanisms of low-level discipline in my life really help my creative process. So I insist on it.
Sounds almost military as an existence.
In a sense, but I guess there's also a part of it that's just your personality. You react to things in a certain way, and I've always been like that. I react to extremes in a good way. If I can be really abstinent about certain things, and you know what I mean? It's like the cut and dried nature of it is easier, I guess. Moderation is harder than abstinence, I guess.
Yeah. No, I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny because even my parents and friends and, I've most of the relationships the close relationships in my life are all very, 30 some odd years. Like we've all known each other for so long, right? And it keeps us in check, which helps. But oftentimes my parents and some of these friends as well, they're just like, oh, you're always working. You're always doing your thing. You should stop.
Do they fear that you may burn out, or is it?
Well, I have burnt out in the past, to be fair to that. But the thing that I have to constantly remind people whom I care about is that I'm like, I get to do this. This is my dream. This is what I've wanted to do my whole life. And because of the nature of the material, it's always been a little left to center. I couldn't get anybody to pay attention to it. You know what I mean? I'd be like trying to get it signed or trying to get on some stupid fucking tour or whatever. And you know what I mean? And then when I finally came to the conclusion, I'm like, the only way I'm going to be able to actualize these visions that I have, which are of a scale that is just up to this point, I've been told, you can't do it. Like this Moth project, the scale is crazy. It's hundreds of people on stage and a narrative and the visuals and all these things. And so I just created my own environment to do that. I started my own label. I learned how to engineer. I learned how to produce. I built my own studio. I put together a team of emotionally, healthy adults that we can problem solve
and Darby
together.
Todd.
What's this? Oh yeah, yeah, Darby Todd. Yeah, yeah. So Darby, so he's like when I first met him, I was like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna, if we're right for each other, right?
Yeah.
But he has proved himself on every possible level and has been such a phenomenal help with the workload.
Do you know what? I've been a friend of Darby's for a long time now, actually.
Oh, it's great. He's told me.
Yeah, and he was always a fan of yours. And when he got the gig, I was like, wow, I was really happy for him. I had no idea how long he'd have the gig for, but I think it's working out nicely, right?
It wasn't even we were never intending to go any further. I just, we got offered that Bloodstock show in the UK at the tail end of the pandemic, and it was contingent on me doing a 2-week quarantine and using an entirely British band and crew. And fortunately, management and most of the crew and everybody already lives in the UK. So it was a small leap for the most part. But I had to contact people to find a drummer, and I contacted my friend at Toontrack, and he said, "Well, we work with a guy based out of Britain who's more of a jazz drummer, actually, but he has the capacity to learn." And man, he did that Bloodstock show as a guy who'd never played metal, really, and he pulled it off, man. And then just kept pulling these things off. And so what I value in my relationships with people is specifically on a business front is no drama, and I just do the work consistently. You don't rush the beat, and I'm good, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very, very happy that he came to the table and has helped me tremendously. And he's been involved with not only PowerNerd, but he's also on the Moth now as well.
Oh, is he? That's fantastic. I was going to ask about that.
We're very different people, but I got to say, but at the same time, it's like he's got a great heart and he really works hard. And that's just so important to me because the amount of things that I want to do with the work is just so... Yeah. I guess ambitious in a sense that if we're going to shoot for the universe, I need somebody who can at least breathe on the moon, right? Wow, right. That was an awful fucking quote.
I love that.
Holy shit.
That's beautiful.
That was a stretch.
That's it. Yeah, that's the thumbnail. Sorted.
It's like a crap t-shirt, that one.
Yeah, I think the thing about Darby is he seems like he's going to be a handful. And some of the things he says, you're like, okay, we're going to keep you out of interviews, I think. But then as soon as he starts playing, it's all good. It's
even beyond that for me. It's like as players, I've got certain criteria for each role, and consistency is super important to me because I'm not in a band. It's like the idea is not to. I've been in bands and I've tried with full earnestness to create what is in hindsight sort of like a democratic dictatorship, where I'm like everybody has a voice, yet do it my way.
Yeah.
And then by the end, everybody's just, it just doesn't work. And I've learned that lesson on enough occasions now that now I just hire people. And I'm like, this is what the job requires. This is how many days in a year we'll be seeing each other. And as long as all those criteria are hit and you're not, being emotionally or psychologically abusive to the other team members, then let's fucking make some music, right?
Yeah. So when you say... bands, there was an alarming statistic about how many bands are in the top 10 of the main territories.
I saw that.
As opposed to, like, I think in the 70s it was probably about half of the top 40 would be bands, and then the other half would be solo artists or manufactured boy bands or whatever. And now it's practically zero. But bands just aren't a thing anymore, and there's a real individualistic kind of. There's a temptation to put that down to social media, I suppose, and sort of think about,
Well, I guess we could, but we could also just say that it was just a sign of the time, because the entertainment back in the 70s was much more limited, and the types of environments that were fostered to create these sort of rock shows became the thing. And now it's a relic, It's like. And I think that there's good and bad to that. The good, I personally believe, is there's a lot of aspects of the sort of 80s and 70s rock and roll lifestyle that I just think is romanticized in a way that I personally I'm just not interested in. So when people are like, oh my God, I missed that, I'm just like, really? All right,
Yeah. But I think,
it's just me.
I don't know if that is the thing that's missing, though. I think it's actually. I would suggest it's mystique that's missing, because there's something about a band on a tour bus and you think, well, I wonder what happens on there, and then there's certain bits of the mythology that gets perpetuated because it's the exciting stuff that you don't get to do in a normal day-to-day environment, and it's sex and drugs and rock and roll and stuff. But
dude, I've been doing this for 36 years, and it's like I've had a lot of sex, but it's all just been with one person.
Yeah. I mean,
myself.
I was going to talk to you about a television format, actually, because when I was preparing this
wank cam.
Well,
yeah,
actually, I was going to call it Celebrity Wank Bank. The idea is so you and I face away from the cameras and we masturbate.
Okay. We have a wank off?
Basically a wank off, and then people can, contribute monies, and we watch the wank bank increase. So you've got to figure out, do you want to shoot your load before a certain amount is, accumulated, thus winning, but winning a smaller amount. And it's like this psychological game of masturbatory chicken, I suppose. And then
two thoughts. One, we wouldn't. How would they be able to confirm that we're actually doing it if our backs are?
That's the thing is, upon completion, you would have to present to the camera the evidence of your having finalized the act.
It's easy to a little bit of hand lotion, and you can probably pull that off. The viscosity is much so. But I also feel that as I get older, my ejaculations are miserable. They're no longer. It's not like when you say there's a certain romance to even just the phrase "shoot one's load," right? It implies like a type of force. But I find as we get older, it's like the remnants at the end of like a soap pump.
Yeah. Oh.
Similar.
It makes a similar sound, I would imagine, too.
What, crying? Yeah, the cry wank, man.
Disappointed crying. I'll put Devin Townsend down for episode 1. That's beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Okay, Celebrity Wank Bank. I was saying to the producer,
and the conversation took a dramatic turn.
No, but I mean, I love the concept, but I have less faith in the format if we don't keep the celebrity part of it. Because if it's just everyday folk, I don't know if it would have the legs really. But
yeah, I think at the end of this meeting, the minutes are going to reflect that. Yes, needs to be celebrity.
Definitely, I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of it. Really.
Well, you see, here's the thing, man. It's like I've got all these ideas, and I've always had the desire to see these ideas through, which has yielded things of varying degrees of quality. Like sometimes, at the end of a project, like, wow, you didn't need to actualize that one. That was not a good idea. Yeah. But I do feel that if you had unlimited resources, just enough money to just like fuck everybody over and everything, then why would you not contribute huge amounts of money to Celebrity Wank Bank?
For me, it's just it's a sound investment. We already know the format works. I mean,
first time I saw Naked Attraction was actually during that a COVID lockdown while I was in Manchester. So I had fucked up my back. I was stuck in a Holiday Inn in Manchester, and I was watching Naked Attraction. Yeah. Like when I went to change my Apple ID login code a year later, I had forgotten what it was, and I couldn't figure out the password, so I had to contact somebody who also knew, and they said, oh yeah, we looked it up, and it was all cap, Manchester is bleak, 3 exclamation marks. So.
Nice. Yeah. But I think, the nature of that television format, I mean, that tells you something about the way people consume culture. I wondered about how do you define success? I mean, because you're talking about like having a million projects on the go, you conclude all of them, and sometimes that's not the right thing, but it might be a springboard into something that is more that bears more fruit and stuff. And there's some things you might be embarrassed about, and it's the same with any prolific artist, I think. But I wondered what does success look like for Devin Townsend?
I think it's easy enough for me to define. When I wake up in the morning, I don't have to do anything. It's not that I'm not going to do anything, but I don't have to do anything.
So you don't see... I was wondering if, like, as an individual project, like, for example, what would success look like for The Moth? And what does success look like for PowerNerd? Sure. What were you hoping to achieve with those things?
I just want to continue and make each iteration of the creative vision more and more refined, because... if there's anything I bring to the table as a creative, is I've got a very, very definite and strong vision. And it's of a scale that requires huge amounts of resource, whether or not even finances aside, just like manpower, musicians. And the way that I view the creative act, as pretentious as it may sound, is that simply being able to create music is you're expressing a type of gratitude for the experience of being alive that there's no words for, in a way. And so the responsibility of an artist...
reward then, really, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But that reward is contingent on getting it right. And so in the past, whenever I've managed to get funds to do a project, or got musicians to do a project, or some special, attribute that might make a project more lovely, the feeling was never that of like, oh yeah, finally, or that's what I deserve, or it's just like, yeah, we need that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, as we move forward, the things that I want to do in the future is to be able to never have to fucking think about money. I hate it, because the people who are the best, the people that I want to do The Moth, to do the next operatic thing that we do in a couple of years, I want them to be the people that are working on these high-level films. But you have to afford them, because there's no impetus for them to come work on some Dick Symphony or Celebrity Crywank if they're not getting paid what they can get paid to do fucking Ant-Man or whatever.
I think Crywank is, in fact, what's the... Oh, it's
the load that broke the camel's...
No, it's the exception that proves the rule. That's what it is.
The exception that proves the rule.
It's the exception that proves the rule.
Crywank.
Yeah. Because that's Celebrity a passion project for everybody concerned, I
Justin
think.
Hawkins and Devin Townsend.
Episode 1.
Episode 1, yeah. Just sadness. Yeah. No, but that's it, man. And it's so like, in order to do The Moth, so basically it's March 27th and 28th. If it goes the way that I've made a film for it, but we've just done it as a proof of concept. So if we pull this off and the people who might want to invest in a film were there, we haven't broke the back, but we've got like a storyboard that we've got behind us. Mm-hmm. We've got 170 people on stage. We're one of the best orchestras, best choirs, all these things. The band is incredible. But even at that, the scale of the ideas are such that if we were able to delegate each aspect of this workload, which after so many records, I understand what each one of those aspects requires. Mm-hmm. If I could have teams aside for each one of those, like, okay, there's the drums, there's the bass team, there's the choir, there's the orchestra, there's the mix, there's the, all these sorts of things delegated. And then a project manager to be able to make sure that those deadlines are met, then you could articulate these visions in such a way that, allows not only for you to be able to afford these artists, but also you're setting a precedent because you're doing it without any artistic chokehold at all. Like, no one's going to tell you what to do. The only people that are going to, the only way that the Moth story changed, for example, is because at first I wanted it to be a metaphor for power. So it's just dudes killing each other with their dicks and this huge vagina being brought out on this platform with these knights with, you know, just like willing to be devoured. It's like, which was, in my mind, the same metaphor for what we ended up using it on. But then when I approached the women that were involved with the production, I said, listen, just hear me out. They all just looked at me like I was wearing their sweater. And I had to realize pretty quickly that if your motivation to do that is rooted in like just trying to be provocative, which I think in hindsight it was, then dude, it's a lot of fucking money. You know what I mean? But if your motivation to do it is to like follow the vision in its truest form musically, then that metaphor can be articulated in a number of different ways. It's just power, right? So what to answer your question about an hour and a half ago about, are you doing all this just for one or two shows? The answer is a resounding maybe, but we're also entertaining the idea of doing it as a live stream. And what's interesting is this is a record I've been working on for 10 years, and the pressure of putting out the music, the first that anybody's heard this as a live stream, is delicious. I love it because in a sense, it puts everybody in this position where you have to finish it. You have to commit to the parts. You have to commit to these tonalities. The orchestra has to commit to this by a certain deadline. Choir, it's all been delivered. Choir's got their parts. Orchestra's got their parts. So we're considering doing a live stream as well, because that would be a trial by fire. But that's nice. 10 years in the making, it's fucking epic as shit.
I think you've had a decade to prepare for that, so that's ideal, really.
Yeah, man.
Amazing. I wanted to talk about your relationship with your audience and whether, because I suppose they enjoy being challenged by the stuff that you're giving them. They enjoy being sated by the more accessible things. They love you as a person because of, you know, some of your probably, I don't know, your overall vibe is good, isn't it? And you've got like this, I suppose you've got a hardcore cult following, right? That's is it fair to say that?
I never really made a conscious decision to do this. I mean, I did, obviously I did, or else I wouldn't be here. But I when I was a kid, I was never like really a Kiss fan, and I never really, I mean, the stuff I liked to Kiss was in the 80s, you know? So the whole idea of going on tour and being in a rock band held very little allure for me as a kid, you know? But I was always really, really focused on sound. Ever since either sound design or, you know, I loved the soundtracks for Star Wars or The Dark Crystal, and I loved West Side Story and Jesus Christ Superstar and all these things. And so my motivation was always heading towards that. And I guess either just a combination of being pig-headed or just, you know, naive arrogance or whatever is the motivator in my personality. I've always just done it. It's just a bullheaded move. And so I believe that the audience, and the reason why I've got such a incredible audience, man, like just incredible audience, is because the criteria for whether or not I choose to do something is whether or not it's what interests me in the moment. Right. And so the authenticity of what drives that creation is consistent throughout all the work, whether or not it's Casualties of Cool, where we did a country record.
Yeah, that's the country stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, or like Strapping, where it was like thrash metal, or Empath, or The Moth, or Hummer, the Dream Piece stuff.
Like, so because there's obviously contrasting aesthetics involved with all of those projects. Is it the same audience that sort of follows you around between the various different incarnations?
Yeah. I mean, I believe that there's a certain amount of tolerance on the part of like the more dyed-in-the-wool metal fans, where they're just like, okay, well, as long as he makes something every now and then that sounds like he's got his balls stuck in a taffy puller, we're cool for him to do the, the Dream Piece stuff, the ambient stuff. But again, I do firmly believe that. And when I say this, it comes across as being a lot more like self-congratulatory than I mean, and I truly mean that. But I think that there's authenticity is in maybe lower availability than it was in the 70s.
But I do also feel that I'm going to expand on that because I think it's becoming a commodity again, and I think it's something that people are going to really start to appreciate.
Oh, that's interesting. Why do you feel that?
I think because there's so much shit that you can do with laptops, you know,
Yeah.
and it's just you know, and I think. I always say the same thing. Most stuff is average. That's the definition of average. And the really exceptional kind of virtuosity that you see in things like Polyphia and this stuff's getting huge. You know, there's a lot of people who are really excited about it. There are girls picking up guitars and learning guitar because of Taylor Swift, and there's going to be a new wave of kind of virtuoso.
I can see that.
You know, stringed instrument players. I think.
I guess the thing is, you know, my wife's typically been critical of me for this, but I don't care, you know, and I don't mean that in terms of like, I don't care about people, or I don't care about, you know, society, or I don't care about social responsibilities or anything like that. Absolutely not, of course. But I'm not, as long as I can pay my bills and continue doing the things that I do, I don't care.
Yeah.
About the success for me,
right?
But, and in fact,
you can see the contrast though. You can see the like, if you want to be in a situation where money is no object and you can realize all of your creative visions, then there is going to be a certain obligation, isn't there, to either expand your audience or at least find a way to have them invest in what you're doing in a really tangible way.
Truly, and I appreciate you bringing that, because I think that as things progress, you're constantly faced with these decisions, you know, and those decisions oftentimes are like subversively in opposition to authenticity. Like, you may think because something's being presented, it's like, you know, dude, I've been wearing, like, you know, I haven't shaved in believe it or not, like, in a week. This is what it looks like after a week. But, you know,
but it is cold up there, though, isn't it? So it takes longer for it to come through.
I also like coats and hats too, so that's a problem.
You are fond of those, yeah.
But I think the decisions that we're asked to make along the way are subversive, because all of a sudden somebody might say, hey, you know, it would be really better for your public, you know, your public persona is if you got rid of your shirt that smells like a yak's balls and like wear this nice jacket. And then all of a sudden you put this on, and before you know it, you're like looking back, you're like, oh wow, at some point, you know, because as an artist, I'm just fundamentally so insecure that, you know, people telling you that, oh, you're a good boy or whatever. I'm like, maybe I do like jackets now. Okay. And then before you know it, you're like, you're down these avenues just because it's...
Okay, so you're you're resilient and resistant to, you're resistant to any sort of validation regarding your aesthetic. You're rejecting everything.
No, I disagree with that, but I appreciate that it comes across like that. And the way I disagree with that is that I have often felt, and this is a frame of mind that a lot of artist friends do not share of mine, is that art doesn't belong to artists, that you are a conduit to a type of creative energy that exists everywhere. And so your responsibility as an artist is to articulate that accurately. And any reflection of that upon yourself is only that of, it's through the filter of your own bias that it is presented in a certain way. Like, my trip as, you know, a human being named Devin is, you know, there's like metal shit in it and awkward stuff and fart jokes and all this sort of thing. So my trip is always going to filter it through that. And so when people are insistent on complimenting me as not the musician, because of course I'm a musician, but as the source of the music, I'm really uncomfortable with that, because I'm just grateful to do it. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does. But I can see it. I can also see another conflict there, because it's kind of like,
please.
It's interesting when you talk about like finding the music to articulate, you know, the emotional events and where you're at. And they're almost sort of journal entries, but perhaps not in the sense that it's an explicit depiction of a narrative. Explicit. You know, okay, well then it is explicit. So you have to take some credit for being prepared to put enough of yourself in to make those emotions resonate in the music itself. So even if you don't take credit for the ethereal source of these bits of inspiration, to put your emotions and your experience on it takes courage, and I think that is something that you should
well, that's very kind of you, and I really appreciate that. That is a very nice thing to say. I would say, and again, I'm not rejecting validation, truly, because I do know my worth, and I do, I'm not self-deprecating when it comes to my own value, but I will say that the responsibility or the ownership that I claim over the creative act is similar to the ownership that I would create over the successes of my child, in the sense that I felt like I did a decent enough job instilling certain things, and then you just let it go because it's separate from you, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of times when we go back to why the audience has been so receptive is since the beginning, my frame of mind has been this. So as a conduit to music, all of the actions that one's life is going to include are going to inform what you hear or what you don't hear. If you start, blowing dudes in an alley on Tuesday nights, there's a good chance that, some of your riffs are going to change. I know it changed mine, but
exactly, yeah. You'll notice that mine have always stayed the same. So
yeah, so I think that certain amounts of like self-regulation or the discipline that goes into, and everybody's different, of course. I mean, dude, of course. So learning about what your own parameters are and what your own needs are and what you do respond to and what you don't respond to, which is going to be different than other guitar players and other singers, is fundamental in order to be able to find one's own voice, I believe.
Yeah. But then, so you have a dedicated Devin Townsend audience who will tolerate the things that they might not individually appreciate.
Totally.
Because they know that eventually you're going to come back to doing the thing that they love, and there's so much.
Well, not only that, they know that I'm doing it because it's what I want to do.
Right. So what they're really investing in then is you as a conduit, spraying your musicality across all of the genres that you're capable of and passionate about.
But I also don't think it's of any real significance, right? I think that's the thing that's, and I've said this quote a million times. I did a guy. Anyway,
getting back to that's
my story.
I noticed your riff changed.
Back to you. No, this one guy said it's like, your life is just like, it's like a field full of like horse shit, and at the other end of it is death, and then you're just careening towards death, and then when the shit solidifies into albums on the side, it's a document of the mistakes you made.
That's awesome. That sounds great, actually. That's giving me some hope. That's lovely.
Yeah, well, you know what, but at the same time, fundamentally, I fucking love it so much, man. I love it so much. I love being creative. I love people not telling me what to do, which is where the fight comes. So if it comes to owning any part of this creative venture without being like, oh no, it's not me, it's the music. If there's anything I'll fight for or anything I'll own is like, dude, I've had to fight hand and fist for independence so that I can create whatever it is that I feel compelled to create, whenever it is that I feel compelled to create it with a great group of people. Mm-hmm. And, the future for me is that, but with like bigger production.
It's so inspiring to talk to you because I think that your experience of it and the way the fights that you've actually taken part in to be able to get to this point, it bears so little resemblance to like the things that I would advise, like especially bands, like because if a band said to me, all right, what do you do then? What shall I do about music?
Sure.
And of course the Devin Townsend answer is whatever it fucking takes, you just do the music, and the music is the thing, it's its own reward. Don't worry about anything else. Whereas I would say find your audience. Because otherwise how can you perpetuate it? How do you finance it, and how do you get to
be fair, I'm being flippant about it because I've already found the audience.
Right.
I have people. I've been doing it 35 years. It's like, man, 1992. I was living in the UK. I was in the Wild Hearts.
Oh, I forgot about that. Of course, you're in the Wild Hearts. Amazing.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So it's like my tenure has been 20 and 30, and I've just been. I would like to say, because it's super romantic to say that since the beginning I've been standing up on, like a precipice somewhere with one foot up, like, Lion King holding Simba up, like rejecting any impositions to my creative process since day one. But I just think I'm fucking bullheaded and oblivious. Yeah. And I just think that I'm like, I want to do that, and so I'm going to do that. And then And people are like, well, we're not going to fund it and no one's going to listen to it. And I'm like, okay, I'm still doing it though.
Yeah. That's not your problem.
It's not your problem. This is great for you then. That's ideal. You're not interested and now you don't have to do it. Great. Yeah, awesome. I'll let you know when it's done.
Yeah.
But that's why a lot of it's come across like a High School Musical up to this point, because we just haven't had a budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I suppose do you ever feel like if you played the game a little bit and like,
buddy,
I'm
shit at it.
I know.
I'm shit at it. And the thing is,
you've tried. Honestly, don't think you've tried.
I have. Brother, you've been so kind to me, and all these votes of confidence that you give me, I just think once we get to know each other a little better, you'd be like, oh yeah, of course not. Yeah. But I've been fortunate enough on maybe between 7 and 10 occasions that some high level, like wealthy rock and roll guy decides that he wants to be my friend.
Okay.
And every time it's ended in tears. You know what I mean? Because what usually happens is I go to these things, I'll go to the parties or whatever, and they'll be like, you're one of us. And I'm like, I don't know what that means first. But after a while, I'm like, dude, it's all exhausting. Anybody who's like that, anybody who's had super high levels of success are type A in ways that I'm just like, dude, it's like sociopathic behavior a lot of the times, where it's like 8 o'clock at night, dude, I just want to go to bed. And, people are like, we should go blow up a toy helicopter over top of a pool or something. I'm like, dude, that sounds fucking awful. Why don't we have a cup of tea and read a book and then go to bed?
Yeah.
So I can't hang, dude. Like, I really can't. It seems like that level of success requires a type of success-driven single-mindedness that I just don't share. I don't share it.
Do you find ambition ugly? Do you think that's something?
No, not at all. Because I'm ambitious about the things that I'm ambitious about, like wanting to create a better life for my family, or I've got a 12-year-old dog here that'll do anything for. You know what I mean? Like that sort of ambition, I think, is reasonably healthy. But if your ambition for success is not being vetted by a real healthy objective viewpoint on your own motivations to do so, I think that you can put yourself in a position where you're just never going to be fucking happy, because you think that at some level success is going to fill the void, and it just doesn't. I mean, historically that has been proven time and time and again, But what does help is not having to think about money. So like you said earlier, that juxtaposition requires a bit of nuance.
I think so, and I wonder if there's ever a temptation to try and broaden your audience by playing the game and sort of doing the stuff that triggers the algorithm and allows you to be pushed into people's feeds and stuff.
My shit sells the same whether or not I'm making operas about farting aliens or making pop songs. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So it's like I might as well do the thing that I really want to do, because I'm 53 years old now. You
absolutely should do that. I totally support you, right? But if I was your manager, buddy, I'd be saying like, I'm just trying to get you to talk about social media stuff, because I do think that
I'll talk about anything.
Content versus art. I think content versus art, like content.
Okay, content versus art. Content versus art.
Now, content versus art. Yeah, so content is that's the thing that you need to continuously supply so that people become aware of the art, right? Go on.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
I think that for me, I can only speak for me, obviously, in order for me to navigate social media in a way that's going to be beneficial to the career and also, trigger the algorithm to whatever, without having to, do a tap dance routine in a diaper or something, is hit it when I feel compelled to do it. And at that point, the content that I'm going to create is going to be that is interesting to me. Because when I tried to just do a weekly thing of like, here's me playing a guitar solo, here's me, look, I can turn my foot upside down, or whatever party trick we're trying to get views with, I just end up resenting it. But when I do what I've done for the promotion of The Moth, which we start putting out in the next couple of months, I built this crazy spaceship in the basement, and I made it green screen, and it's all the gear that the companies provide me, and so I do these improvs. And so the next round of social media content that I'll be providing is going to be out because I wanted to do it. You know what I mean? I thought, oh, that would be fucking cool. That would be cool.
I think if there's green screens involved and stuff, I think it's probably edging closer to the art area than content.
Maybe. But at the same time, I will say that what has been supremely helpful is just swallowing the fact that I'm never going to be a superstar, and I'm never going to, it's just not in the cards for me. That's my feeling, at least. And so as a result of that, if my motivation to do social media is only to enhance the experience of what I've been privy to artistically for the people who care about it, then it's a fantastic tool. It's amazing. But I also feel that those same people get irritated if they're following an artist because they're content on just doing whatever the fuck they feel like doing, yet all of a sudden their feed is being inundated by a bunch of social media things.
That's where your responsibility to your audience really kicks in, isn't it? Because what they want from you is you to be fulfilled and prolific.
I agree. But everything's a balance, isn't it? I mean, we recently hired a social media coordinator, and we're just experimenting with it, but it's been great for me because it allows me to just film shitloads of content, which I've got no problems doing. I love just, talking bollocks to everybody. It's like 90% of what I do, right?
Same here.
But then if I hand it to them as opposed to just putting it up without any strategy, there seems to be some sort of thing that happens that seems to ride that cusp of pissing off the people that don't like that stuff and engaging new people.
It is difficult, isn't it? Like every step you take, you kind of have to think, well, which section of my audience will I alienate when I do this?
That's it.
And how much do I care? Dude. It's like, so
100%.
So you're kind of like...
100%.
Oh, I don't know. When it comes to the music, I think it's actually easier because it should only be, in my view, one way. You put it out and then never think about it again.
I think that the answer... I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off. Sorry.
Not at all. I like it when you do that.
Really?
Yeah, jump in, man. Jump in.
No, that's great. Yeah. Please. All right. So anyway, what I was saying, I think your responsibility to the audience at that point it comes in accepting it, just being like, look, guys, I know this is just as irritating to me as it is to you, but at the same time, the way that I would view the audience in that is, I'm saying, to a degree, of course. I mean, we're a team, again, to a degree, and if we're on a team and you've put the faith in me to hear all this crazy shit and put together and delegate the workload so we can all see it, it's going to require a bit more money to take it to the level that it can be taken to. And in order for me to retain the artistic sensibilities that up to this point have been free from any influence, you're going to have to tolerate a couple of these social media posts. Because I keep thinking, oh, dude, it's like how many more years until we're dead, right? Like, I'm 55 now. If I'm lucky, I got 25 or 30 years, right? And it's like, I've been doing this career for 35 already. So I think, oh, life is just this fluid, transient thing. So as long as you're trying to remain as emotionally balanced for the people around you who rely on you and that you care for and who care for you, fuck it. Just make the biggest spectacles of the most surreal variety with the best people you can possibly get, and do it. And then, because one day you're going to be dead and it all disappears and it doesn't matter. So during this time, why would I want to write something, that has a committee behind it, deciding whether or not, those chords work for the summer or whether or not that's going to appeal to the Gen Z demographic or whatever. I'm like, no, man, I just want to be creative without any barriers with the best people.
And one of the things that I wanted to say to you was when we came up as the Darkness, right? There's no allegorical tale between what's happened in my career and yours, but they used to tell us things at the beginning. They used to say, okay, so in America, the really powerful kind of promotional force would be the radio in those days. And in the UK, it's the press. In France, it might be television. But, they'd have a territory and the way in for a band that came from England. It seems to me that I can remember the first times I was hearing about you and Strapping Young Lad, it was Pete Rinaldi and it was Darby Todd that were telling me about them. Seriously, and so
That's
so
funny.
then I've come to associate you with being like a discerning virtuoso musician's choice when it comes to what they listen to. That's what you are.
Huh.
I think you're like I don't know, like for a foodie, you're like a Michelin star artist. You know what I mean?
That's,
It's not,
I mean, that's very generous of you, brother.
Well,
I can
no,
point
'cause
to a number of situations that defy that, but
yeah,
thank you.
okay, you probably can. But the thing is, what I'm saying is, you're not a Happy Meal. You know what I mean? Like, you're something far more fusiony, if you'll permit. You know, and
We got to think of an emotion that's not happy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it's
right,
like,
no,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there may be happiness when devouring the meal that you offer, but it's going to be
Truly.
more sophisticated,
Yeah.
and I think probably
or at
enjoyed
least
by
penis.
perhaps, yes,
Yeah, happiness.
yeah.
Well, I
happy-
appreciate that, Justin. I mean, I'm awful with compliments, as I'm sure you can tell, but I really appreciate it. I really do. I thank you very much.
No, but it's just so. What I was going to say was, if we reject radio, press.
Yeah.
And all of the traditional kind of I think your technique,
remains.
yeah, you are relying solely on word of mouth.
I guess. Yeah,
You know,
isn't that
and
weird?
it's working. It's evidently working.
Yeah, I guess. You know what's funny is it's like I care about the success in to the extent that it allows me to continue, and I mean that. But I don't like being seen. I don't like being recognized. I don't like, and I'm good at performing, and I can actually get up there. Like, if there's an award show that needs an MC, I can do that shit because I'm a ham, right? But but really, in terms of success for me, it's never been. It doesn't matter beyond being able to continue doing it. So it's funny that people have asked about my technique for sustaining a career. Or even more hilariously, they ask about my technique for vocals. when the first vocal teacher, the only vocal teacher I went to when I sang for me, he's like, "Oh, you're going to lose your voice with that technique within a year." Mm-hmm. And here I am 30 years later screaming like without any real technique.
Well, do you feel like maybe that vocal coach was trying to make himself indispensable?
No, it was during the Steve Vai experience, and Steve knew that I'd never had any real formal vocal coaching, so I went to this guy that taught the stars, right? Mm-hmm. Like he did all these dudes. So
what was
he had
his name?
Roger Love was his name.
Oh, that
and
sounds familiar somehow. Was he a famous one?
Yeah, he was famous, and there was zero reason for him to patronize me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
sure.
I'm just some chump. I was like 19-year-old kid. He doesn't give a fuck, right?
He wasn't struggling for
so
work.
when I came in and did my thing, he was just like, "Yeah, I can't. If that's the way you sing, you're going to lose your voice, and I can't teach you." And then, so I just kept doing my thing. And so now, so many years later, people are like, "Well, what's your vocal technique?" And I'm like, "Well, after not singing at all for 6 months, because I don't like the experience of singing, I'll scream my balls off for 2 days until it is like you taste blood, and then you're fine for about a month."
That is some of the most irresponsible advice I've ever.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
So I just started singing because I got this Moth show, and it's really vocal centric.
Okay.
Like this is why I got Pete Rinaldi involved as well, because I played guitar for my whole career. I was like guitar and voice, and of course I still do. I record all the guitar, blah, blah, blah. But the Moth is, I'm hoping in the future, this performance is something that other singers can perform. It's really like supposed to be like a vocal sort of tour de force in a sense, where there's all sorts of, like, there's operatic stuff, there's quiet stuff, there's brutal stuff, there's all these sorts of things. But also because of the nature of the complication of the arrangements, because I really kind of leaned into that for this opportunity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guitar, the 1 falls on the 3 or the 2.5 or the whatever. So in order for it to be precise, and considering that if we do this live stream, it'll be 10 years in the making. The first anybody's going to hear of it is going to be a live performance. It's like insane in that regard. So I decided to focus exclusively on the vocals.
Nice.
So I did my 2 days of screaming until I tasted blood 2 days ago, yesterday and the day before.
Great. But
and now I'm ready to sing, so I start tracking vocals tonight.
Your speaking voice sounds clear as a bell.
Really?
Yeah. Have you ever had anything like
buddy.
polyps or anything like that?
I don't know.
I think you'd know. You would know.
Yeah, I mean, I can still do it, so there's that.
Yeah.
But sometimes I can't, so there's that as well. But I mean, honestly, brother, I mean, I work constantly because I love it and I love doing it. But I also, again, I've got kids, I've got older parents, pets, a business, a label, all these things that require, like some degree of balance. So when I finally do get into the studio and let it rip, a lot of times people will hear the concepts or they'll hear the type of music and they say, oh, well, that's indicative of some sort of mental imbalance. Clearly, there's like schizophrenia there because listen to it. It's all over the place. I'm thinking, no, dude, the rest of my life is so controlled. Like every aspect of my life requires regulation or else it's just going to go off the rails as it has been proven in the past. So when I finally get to make something like The Moth, I'm like, dude, let's balls out, brother.
So when you're going to be rehearsing the Moth?
So the guitar player, Mike Keneally, Pete Rinaldi, Darby Todd, James Leach, they all get to Vancouver because I've sort of made my little studio / rehearsal place here. And it's just, we've got everything set up to record too. So it's easier just to have people here. And so they get here in 2 weeks.
Right. So then that gives you what? Like a month. That's a month. Right.
Yeah, but we get everybody's learning their parts independently. So the thing about The Moth that was so crazy is it's like 5 concurrently developed jigsaw puzzles, like I'd said before. So typically what happens is if you're doing choral parts, for example, for me, my process is that's one of the last things that come together because the lyrics of the choir are informed by the lead vocals, which tend to take a while to kind of come together into something that's like, like a cohesive narrative. So choir doesn't happen to the end, but the nature of The Moth was such that they needed the score for the choir before the score for the orchestra, which was due in December. And so I had to write The Moth, leaving gaps for myself under the assumption that in the future we're going to need to repeat a theme here. We're going to have to reiterate a certain vocal cadence there or whatever. And it's hilarious because all of a sudden the choir comes back, fully recorded, edited, sounds incredible. And you're just like, oh shit, it's a 16th note off from where the guitars are. So you have to sort of go in and then move that. And the process is just so, I just love it, man. It's like, I love details. I love the smallest minutia of a musical passage and just seeing the ways that you can make that work. And then if you run 200 of them together with choir and orchestra, I mean, the effect is irritating to many people.
Yeah, well, that's what you'd hope, at least. But I think, But I wanted to ask you though, because how do you feel when you perform a thing like that? I mean, obviously we haven't done The Moth yet, but I'm just saying, I'm wondering, because for me, when I'm performing, I have routine in the day. Every show day is the same for me, and then I have 2 hours of complete freedom where I'm just like on stage and whatever I say is like, or whatever musical kind of whim occurs to me, that my band will follow me and we'll just chase.
It's awesome.
To whatever. And every show is different, and it's all just about reacting to the room. And so, but I think when there's something as detailed as The Moth, I'm wondering whether you have that sort of ability to sort of let the world fall apart and be fully focused on that and in flow state, or is it supreme concentration all the way through?
So what I've done with The Moth is because I tried to create a narrative that would adhere itself to something that was going on in my life, and in your mid 50s, and long-term relationships and kids and all these things, like the criteria for emotional impact at this age is frankly not particularly sexy. You know what I mean? Like, here's my new song about I have to sit when I pee at night, when I wake up in the middle of the night, In regards to The Moth, the story needed to be something that I could adhere a trajectory to. So I started with a narrative that was based on like hero's journey, just essentially like Harry Potter, Star Wars sort of shit. Just as a
that's the monomyth. The monomyth.
Yeah. Joseph Campbell, exactly. Yeah. So the idea was that is a story arc that works, whether or not it's particularly original. It works, and so I started as that because then I could kind of fill in the blanks of the music and create a narrative that was like, okay, well, this heavy piece here, or this vocal section here, which already implies a sense of chaos or a sense of conflict, can be adhered to the part of the narrative that requires a conflict, for example. But then from there, I realized, well, I'm not a story writer. Like, You know, it's like, here's a guy and he does some stuff and then stuff, right? Yeah. So then from there, it ended up becoming more like a meta thing. Like, okay, so maybe what you're doing is you're watching the singer, because if this gets used down the road with other singers, then it becomes the story of a transformative experience that's expressed from the point of view of the singer on stage, a single person. Mm-hmm. And then the screens behind end up showing this story with wars and battles and armies and something that's like that sort of hero's journey thing. Mm-hmm. But then what it ends up representing as a result of that is like a visual depiction of the emotion that the singer is participating in. And then concurrently, we're even thinking that maybe even I narrate it. So you narrate a story about yourself on stage, explaining through this pictorial storyboard the depth of these kind of emotions, whether or not they're anger or fear or death or not that that's an emotion. And then you can bridge that gap and not have it purely a technical exercise. Because the idea is that you perform the Moth almost like it's a conversational vocal approach. Like you're talking like this, like, here's the thing that happened, blah, 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 except that you've got it orchestrated so that all those punctuations of what you're doing sound nonchalant from the point of view of the audience, yet they're punctuated, so they're very intentional. So you could be like, you know, once upon a time, there was a thing, and then we went down the stairs, and you know what I mean? And so you kind of bridge the gap, and that opens it up for a certain degree of improvisation as well. Okay. Oh my God, shut the fuck up, Dev.
I'm glad you said it though, because
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled for it, because I would
shut the fuck up.
No, I would be worried that if you're undertaking a thing like that and there's all the pressure and then the interesting time signatures and the stuff that you've got to consider when you're performing that thing, to have the freedom to actually kind of
it's great,
and to give nuance to like the two performances that you're going to do, at least two,
I totally relate. And I totally agree, because I think that that's where the value of live performance is. It's like, it's one thing to have your show and your lights and your visuals and this and that and the other thing, but ultimately you're just trying to bring it to the stage for the sake of the people who have some emotional investment in it. Mm-hmm. And maybe unlike yourself, my least favorite part of touring is the show.
Right.
My favorite part of touring is being on my own and eating.
Yeah, okay.
I love being able to wake up in the morning in some weird town and go eat some food. But then as soon as it's like you got to go to the show, you're just like, oh, right.
Yeah, that is unlike me, actually. I think
I know.
Sometimes I could live without the food,
Yeah, no, I get that. Food's good for me. I go on tour because I appreciate the support of the audience that allows me to do what I do so much that it's and it's not like a begrudging obligation.
No, it looks like you're having fun, to be honest.
It is for sure. But I would never choose it. I think that if someone said, hey, you can just stay in the studio for the rest of your life, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, nice. Well, this has been absolutely awesome. Do you think we should wrap it up?
Yeah, man.
Thanks a lot for a brilliant interview. Really, some amazing insights. And this is like, I always talk about there being two different music trades, and there's one which is the one that we're all aware of, and sometimes we can't escape from, where you have superstars and you got all the machinery and the infrastructure and everything that's just pushing this stuff into our consciousness, and we don't want it there necessarily, but it's there. And then you've got the stuff that's like the some more carefully curated, the jazz side of things, and the amazing players around the world who kind of do stuff and it's under the radar but they have a following. And then there's you, which I think is its own thing, quite honestly.
I mean, I
really do. It's like,
you're very, very kind, man.
No, man, this is I really believe that.
I feel that life is fucking incredible. It's the awesomeness of being a human being on Earth is beyond any conceivable description, and the horror of it, the beauty of it, so fucking. And I'm so dumb, and the combination of those two things is I just write about it. And so if you're interested in a dumb guy writing about how awesome shit is, I've got tons of it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's my favorite stuff. Let's do the theme tune. And,
are you going to play us out?
I think I'm going to play us out.
Sick.
Justin Hawkins rides again. Feel free to join in with the last note. Again.
Again.
Nice.
Give me the note. I'll join in.
Again.
We just did a major thing.
You majorized my minor. That's like harshing someone's vibe.
Yeah, man. It's like your peanut butter's in the peanut butter's in my cheese.
And I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you, Devin Townsend.
Brother.
That was
Thank
brilliant.
you, man. Okay, so Cry Wank next week.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll see you on the ice.
Talk to you soon, okay?
Okay.